affects almost every area of our lives. Really, truly, like there's a dollar sign attached to almost everything. And this includes our mental health. So, what happens to your mental health when you are dealing with a significant amount of debt? It can have real consequences. We're going to talk about that dynamic and what you can do about it with Rob Kilner. He is a licensed insolvency trustee at Spurgill, and he joins us from Barrie, Ontario. Hello there, Rob.
Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
As is the case with Credit Canada, I'm sure the calls that you receive most often have a human on the other end of the line who's dealing with some level of stress, anxiety, all that. How do you see the debt that they carry affecting your client's mental health?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, the one thing people don't always realize how much debts affect them is until it's actually gone.
Mhm.
So some of the things we've seen, like we do have a recent study we did with everybody, which was why eye-opening statistics. I mean, over half our people have sleeping problems. And once you have sleeping problems, it just compounds from there. Like you're then going to be grumpy. You're going to be a rough spouse with your kids, just horrible at work, right? Like just rotten to be around. So when people think of their debt, they don't always think of the other things that affects day to day, which really compounds almost into everything.
And there is a real spectrum here in terms of the debt that people are carrying. For some people, it's a pesky $1,000 they can't get rid of on their credit card. For other people, it's unsecured debt in the tens of thousands of dollars. And for even others, it's like real estate and cars that they just don't know how they're going to be able to pay. Do you see a linear relationship between that debt level and the mental health impact? Or can you have like a relatively small amount of debt and be debilitated by what you're carrying?
Well, that's all relative in the end, anyways, right? So, like somebody who has $8,000 worth of debt and is on government assistance, it's the world to them. They're never getting out of that. Somebody has
Yeah.
8,000 and makes $300,000 a year. It's a rounding error, right? So, it's really more relative, almost to your income and being able to repay it, right? So, yeah, the more you have debt wise in comparison to your income, the more stress it's going to bring, and then yes, that's going to affect your mental health in every aspect of life.
What advice do you have for people on the, like, as someone who deals with clients on the front line to navigate that, the mental health component? Because you've got, as a licensed insolvency trustee, you got a process, you got a plan, you know
Yep.
how to assess the numbers. That's all pretty clear and tangible. What is
Yep.
way less tangible is the mental health stuff. And yet you're probably the person they're talking to about this.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trained as therapists, but we almost
Yeah.
are in some ways, right? From day to day. The first thing is honestly talking to somebody, like just talking to begin with, right? Like what we also see is extreme isolation. Like before they've talked to us, they're just going like, I don't even want to be around my friends because they're going to be talking about this vacation I couldn't do, and it's just depressing and it affects their mental health. The first thing is just talking. So, like, whether you can talk to your spouse, I'd hope you can talk to your spouse, parents, friends, and if even you can't do that, just start talking. Like talk to your dog. Like your dog's the nicest thing in the world. It'll
Yeah.
listen to you. You just got to get the words out, right? To adjust and realize that okay, I've got a little bit of an issue here. It's addressing that and then reaching out. And then once you reach out, that begins that process of kind of the healing to it at all.
So there's this continuum of, the absolute dollars of debt level. There's also continuum in terms of how we think about mental health, from the person who's having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, to the person who has treatment resistant depression. It's
Yep.
actually a thing. Psychiatrists look at this as a thing. How relevant is that to the conversations that people can have with creditors? So, say they're on long term disability because they've got treatment resistant depression. Do creditors pay attention to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the first step when you're dealing with a creditor, first you're the file number to them. Unfortunately, that's what it is these days. Like, back in the 90s and everything, you went in, you tell her there's Sally, she sees you every week, she understands your situation. These days you're a number to start with. But once you're dealing with the creditors, now you got a heartbeat on the other line. Now you actually have a real person looking at this. And they look at these things and they go, is this just somebody who's making a lot of money and enjoying to go to Vegas 10 times a year? Or is this person struggling with this mental health that really needs that helping hand? So once you have that heartbeat on the other line with the creditors, they are more willing to work with you when they understand your situation. So it's personalizing, letting them not know I am a person, I am struggling here. I just need a little bit of help.
So we're starting to get a clear sense on the connection between debt and mental health, about that initial phone call and the importance of just talking, as you say, uh, having some level of disclosure as you work on what my options might be. But then this third step is, some of the people who you talk to choose to pursue a path of consumer proposal or bankruptcy. That's not a no stress option either. What insight do you have about that experience for them that will unfold? It's not like overnight for a consumer proposal. It's going to unfold over the course of years.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost like a last resort in some sense, right? Like we always want to pay back our debt in full. It's always the goal. But if that's just not possible, like you do need some help. I mean, one of the greatest places to start work with is like Credit Canada, like that you're the CEO of it, right? Like, and especially with all the organizations you guys work with, where you can be like, oh, you're having mental health gambling here, there, I can refer you to professionals. But once that doesn't work, and you're just like, I'm just never going to get out of this debt, then yes, you do need, whether it's a proposal, bankruptcy, a license, insolvency trustee. Yes, there's some downsides, like it's having to get through the credit repair and everything, but there's that light at the end of the tunnel, is knowing I'm going to get rid of this debt, which is probably going to get rid of all this financial stress, make me healthier physically, mentally, and everything, so I can get that fresh start, that new life and everything. So yes, it can be a little bit of struggle, but it's just actually finally getting that light at the end of the tunnel, which most people just don't have before they
Yeah.
reach out to you. And that's so incredibly important.
And there, once you sign on to a consumer proposal, you're committed to a plan for a period of time in which you're paying back a portion of that debt, whatever that amount may be, over the course of time. How do you help people stay on path for that? Because some of the issues that got them into that debt scenario in the first place may well still be present in their life.
Yeah, so it could be present, but what you also find is a lot of those negative health and well-being things that they turn to was because of the anxiety and the stress of the debt.
Hmm.
So once we take care of the debt, they're able to focus on those other things. Like a part of our survey, like it was over a third of people, almost 40%, looked at like eating habits. Like they were either overeating, undereating, or anything like that. So if you're spending more and more and more money to eat food because that's your comfort to all this debt level, once you take care of the debt level, you can focus on that well-being. And it's like, now I'm not spending 700-800 on junk going to McDonald's or anything like every month. I'm actually able to eat healthy, reduce my spending habits there, and get me back on track.
Can you think of an example of a client, and obviously I don't want you to share any of the specific
Of course.
details, but the
Yeah.
sense that you got as we call it, the continuum of care for people who
Yeah.
are dealing with debt levels, that you thought, wow, that was a job well done. I really helped that person, not just in the area of debt, but get their emotional and mental health back on track.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things we saw, and I don't give you a touchy subject and everything, but was with COVID and the lockdowns. Like we saw a lot of people get locked down, which caused isolation, which caused depression, and it caused the spending habits.
Mm.
So once they came to us, and we've seen this many times, where it's going like, I went through all this. It's like, okay, let's get that stuff back on track. Let's get it under control. Then you're able to now go deal with those other things that led you to the debt. It's like, okay, I can go out and now start seeing my friends again. I can go out, like I can start and taking them through that journey from beginning to end. I always tell somebody at the beginning, like, you're about to have one of the best sleeps you've had in the longest time, because you're going to realize I don't have to deal with all this debt anymore. I only have this small monthly payment to deal with. And that will help you take those next steps to tackling everything. So by the end, when out their proposal, yes, they have the credit rebuilding, they're dealing with all that.
Yeah.
But they're seeing a much positive aspect more day to day, and they're living lives because they've gotten rid of all that.
Yeah. And the uncertainty, which I'm sure for most people is such a huge driver to the mental health burden, the uncertainty of that, at least that portion of it, can be put aside.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, most people look in there, I was like, oh, I thought you'd be some like grumpy old man. I was like, no, I'm like, I'm happy, go like. And the reason is because I know what the end of your journey looks like better. So you just have to trust me and just go, I will get you there. I know what it looks like for you. You're going to get a new life. And that's so crucially important.
Yeah. Rob, really appreciate you joining us to talk about it.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Thank you for joining us. Rob Kilner is a licensed insolvency trustee at Spurgill, and he was here to talk about the connection between the debt that you carry and the mental health burden that you carry as well.